recording in progress, it says reassuringly. Okay, so I should start off by saying thanks to the people who've helped us put this event together. So the funders of the magazine, that's the Arts Council of Ireland, the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, Belfast City Council, and the Department of Communities. I should also thank Photo Museum Ireland, who have helped us with the event. And I should mention also the actual magazine. And I can do that by showing you a copy. So this is the work issue. I apologize for the poor prints. If you get a copy, it will come pristine, but my dirty cat has walked all over this. So it's not as clean as it would be for someone who's just got it out of the bag. The work issue. So I'll give you a few of the highlights of this issue. We've got a fascinating conversation between Anna Fox, Mark Curran, and the sociologist Rachel Cohen about how to photograph work as a subject. We've got a fascinating piece that we're just about to hear some more about digital workers. We've got three great portfolios. David Flood's A Place Like All Others, with himself as a worker, is great. Moira Lovell's work, which we're just about to talk about, and a fascinating set of archive pictures from the Dublin Dock Workers Preservation Society. Lots of pictures of cranes for people who like cranes, which is me. And then in the review section, obviously there have been an awful lot of shows on over the summer. So the Madame Yvonne show at the National Portrait Gallery, which has just reopened, is exciting. The Tate's attempt to put photographs next to paintings in the Capturing the Moment show, and many others. It's a great selection of stuff. Also in this issue, I should mention the Writers' Prize. We have a fantastic piece by Clara Fitz that is the winner of the Writers' Prize that is published in this issue. And I should mention Ellie Howard, who we're also just about to talk to, with somebody else who submitted a piece of writing for the Writers' Prize, which is in this issue. And the other shortlisted articles for the Writers' Prize will be published while this magazine is in the shops. And it's a terrific range of very different approaches to writing about photography. So have a look at our website to see those as we publish them in the coming month, I would say, for a great selection of short but engaging pieces of photography. We had 145 people submit to the Writers' Prize this year, and we'll run it next year. And it's a great way of encountering many different ways of writing about photography. But anyway, the winner's article is in this issue. I highly recommend it. Also in this issue is the MA supplement. Lots of great MA work this year. I particularly like Holly Staniforth's wonderful collages. But you get this in the magazine, and you can also see all of this work, obviously, in Graduate Photography Online, which you'll find connected to our website. So that's what you get. If you can go to the shop and find a photography magazine, then that's where you get it, or you can buy it from our website, obviously. Today, I'm going to be talking to two people who contributed to this issue, Moira Lovell and Ellie Howard, and they in a happy coincidence, their work coincides around the same subject, as you will discover. But maybe if I could start by talking to Moira. Moira, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Moira Lovell. I'm an artist and researcher, and I'm making work currently, which is about selfie making, and uses some images that I found on a range of selling sites, actually, as a catalyst for making full camera performances, video, photographic self-portraits.
Could you tell us a bit about how you started into the work? We'll look at a few pictures in a minute, but could you say a little bit about what got you going on these images?
Yeah, I can. It's maybe a bit of a long-winded reply, so just bear with me. I'm going to start right at the beginning. So that's around 2016, sort of mid 2016. I had a baby at the end of 2015, and she was my second child, and I decided there would be no more. So I went onto eBay to sell some of the baby paraphernalia, used goods, unused goods. And the reason I was on eBay was to do my research. I was looking for my price point and also to see how other people. So first of all, I could see that people were just kind of laying things on tabletops and photographing things with some available light, taking as many images as possible to describe the images. And from there, through lots of looking, I started to see some really curious ways of photographing objects. So maybe one touchstone image for me, the image that really marks the start of my research, was a stack of baby bottle lids that were on the top of a domestic door handle, you know, the kind of handle you get just somewhere in the house. And I just thought it was a really curious and really funny image. You know, it was a really interesting solution to the problem of photographing baby bottle lids. And that image kind of led me to many other images, which were equally curious. I guess the algorithms changed, and then I just started to see more of these kind of really bizarre, interesting images, such as another notable one was a pair of sunglasses sat on the kitchen countertop. And underneath that was the handle of the drawer, which was arced upwards, and therefore what I was presented with was a smiling face. And then that led me to, oh yeah, and the reason I ended up in fashion is because I think I started to see images. So one such image was a Marilyn Monroe cushion on a settee that had a prom dress around it. So it looked like the prom dress was wearing, Marilyn Monroe was wearing this dress, or a version of. And then I started to find some quite uneasy, or maybe sexualized is the word, images of bags opened in such a way. Yeah, they were quite, yeah, very sexualized. So I kind of found myself wandering into women's fashion. And initially I was just seeing images of outfits hung on coat hangers, you know, in front of wardrobes, or laid on the floor or on beds, then on mannequins, and then slowly women photographing themselves in front of mirrors. And again, the algorithms changed, so I was then starting to see many more of these images. And these images seem to have heads cropped out, objects strewn around, personal possessions. So you might get photographs of babies or weddings in the shot, as well as the bodies, objects, well, socks and pants drying on radiators. You have irons and ironing boards propped up, sometimes just clothes strewn all over the floor, and the cameras masking the face, or mirrors cropping out the faces. And at the time, this was like, this is so rich and really wonderful. This is going to have to be kind of worked up into some bigger exploration. So I ended up using these images as vehicles, or a catalyst for the research project, which I started in 2017. And I probably spent the first 2 years of my studies really struggling to know what to do with the images. They were so resolved in their own way. They were so wonderful that it was really difficult to know what to do with them. But I knew that I didn't just want to put them on the wall. I had 6 years of study ahead of me, part-time study. So I wanted to do something more. I wanted to refer to them. And I started off.
Maybe we should have a look at a few, so we've got a bit more of an idea what you're describing. So, oops, can you see that okay?
Right. I mean, I didn't just go straight to this approach. I started off working with image appropriation. So I was cutting up the works, rearranging them. I was intervening and trying to inhabit them. So cutting sections of hair out, my own hair or hands or camera. And I was ordering the clothes from the women and trying them on and trying to reenact the photographs, but the clothes, they were just very free and I could just really do what I wanted in them. So I didn't feel any sense of connection with the original images, which is one of the things that I found so curious about them. There's this kind of intimacy and familiarity about these images. It must be something to do with the bodies and the behaviors and the personal information, but there's this real kind of sense of them being in close proximity to me. And I think it was very much after attending a brilliant talk by artist Sadie Murdoch, and she showed Rosebush Wheels, which was an image she made in 2015, where she paints her body in grey stage paint, but you can still see bits of kind of pink skin peeping through. And then she enlarges and attaches to her body a range of images made in the modernist period, and then reenacts an image. And there was something in that approach that I wanted to follow. I thought it offered something for my practice. It allowed me to combine my approach as my photo, my image appropriation and reenactment approaches. So I started to enlarge, duplicate the dresses, cut them out and attach them to my body with sellotape, and then approximate the photographs, the original photographs. And what I created was essentially image templates. So something to attach to my body, which held the original seller's body shapes. And then I was able to shape shift and shape hold to kind of fit within the templates as much as possible.
I chose this picture to start off with because it seemed to have something that's characteristic of the whole series of being very strange and sort of slightly alienating, and also that you've got the personhood of the subject of the picture is obscured in many of the pictures. And the bright flash in itself is kind of quite a weird thing in a picture like this. Was the strangeness one of the things that's attracted you to the source material?
Yeah, really strange. Yeah, somebody actually yesterday described my approach as bad Photoshop, and I thought that was a really great way of describing the project. I mean, that strangeness to it. But yes, they were intimate, familiar, felt close, and just very strange. You know, those camera angles, but also the optics of the camera, the way that they create monstrous hands and very small waists, you know, kind of emphasize particular aspects of women's bodies. And they were very sexualized. There's a lot of flesh on show in the originals. There we go.
As we found in these pictures. These also emphasize. So in the process of putting together the pictures in the magazine, I spent quite a long time going through all of the pictures, and excuse me, pussycat. It's to begin with, if you look at lots of pictures like this and you've not really thought about them, but you recognize the style of picture they are, you think of them as all being quite similar. But once I looked at them, I started to realize that there were lots of different things going on in the pictures, and some of them were incredibly close, and much closer than you would get in sort of the personal space, someone's personal space, like in these images. I suppose you were conscious of the sort of weird proximity when you're actually inhabiting these images.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It also foregrounds the strangeness of you being both of the picture and in the picture, which I suppose is very strong in this picture because it's both your body and someone else's body at the same time.
Yeah. So I think there's something of Snapchat and Reface in these image templates, in these works, where your body can be amalgamated with an image of someone else. It could be Beyonce, or it could be like a dancing hot dog or a broccoli puking a rainbow. You know, you can be exposed to extreme otherness and really real profound otherness and see yourself in ways that you never imagined. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity that the digital age offers. And really part of this work is kind of spotlighting that renegotiation between bodies and images in the digital age, and yes, that close proximity I spoke about earlier.
In this image, but quite a few other images, you foreground the making process. So here we see the skin of the back of the person that you're photographed, and also your own skin in the foreground, and the sellotape, which is the kind of bond between them. So, as in quite a lot of other images, you're making clear the process that you've gone to manufacture the image.
Yeah.
How much is that reflective part of your process?
Very intentional, and very much again taking my cue from Sadie Murdoch. So she lets us see, as I said, the skin peeping through, and those material manifestations are a way of kind of drawing a focus towards the labor that's gone on in creating the images. So that's, you know, the creative labor, but also the body work as well, which has a relationship with the original images. As I said, you can see the tools of what Dawn Woolley calls in her writing everyday, what does she call it? Beauty work, you know, the tools of everyday beauty work. So yes, it's very much intentional. It's like a material glitch almost that we're looking at, and really shows my inability to kind of fit and hold the poses. There's also an uneasiness in lots of the shots as well, which again, you know, spotlights that labor. You can just see my husband's hand peeping into that one too.
Where is it?
It's just that he's holding a blue thing by the bookcase.
Oh, right, yes. Yes. Could you say a little bit about the actual making process?
Yeah, sure. So once I've found an image online, I download it. And then I've got one of these huge inkjet printers that I got years ago with the Prince's Trust loan, like an Epson 7800. So I've got some proofing paper on that I print the image out, print it to life size. And then I bring it in, and I like to think of myself like a dressmaker. I lay it out on the floor, and I get my shears and I cut around the outfit. And then I attach it to my body with sticky back plastic, which is, it's so frustrating. I can't describe how frustrating it is. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you remember Bunty's cut out clothing. I don't know if that's what it was called, but Bunty's dresses. So she was this 2D girl that had a variety of outfits with little tabs that you could attach, so you could change your dresses, but they forever slipped and fell off, or the tabs fell off. And it's a little bit like that process. You know, my tabs are the sellotape, so you can't, you know, I'm not blocking out where it's attaching, but it forever peels off and then never sticks back on. Pulls a bit of your skin off, your oils off your body, so it never quite sticks on. And then I try to approximate the original image. I replay the original image in my own domestic space, in a setting that is as close to the original as I can find, you know, as in it might be in a hallway or in a bedroom, kind of downside of the bed. I might be sat down or stood up as the women originally were. And I try as much as possible to get the camera angle. And the dress and the positioning of where my arms need to be really, what does it do? It forces me into that original position as much as possible, I guess. And then I take a photograph of myself. But no doubt, you know, the dresses rip and they tear. But yeah, that's it. That's very much the, you know, that's very much the process.
Yeah. I was very struck by this one, which is the last one we'll show. And I wondered if you had any reflections from the experience of inhabiting lots of these images as yourself, as a sort of as someone who'd come into it rather than so you had some distance from the experience of being in those pictures. Because what you get from quite a lot of the pictures is that the people in them have this kind of fugitive feel to them, that they're hiding in their own houses. And I wondered if you had some reflections about what the media that was producing these images was doing to the people that were in the pictures.
That is so fascinating. I've never thought of them as fugitives, but now I'm looking at it. There is a narrative, or there feels like there's a narrative to this. And the one in the kind of the jacket, I almost feel like Cindy Sherman in that image. It feels like I'm staging a moment in it. I think for me, there's a couple of things bodily. One is that it's. I'm trying not to be hyperbole here. Sometimes I notice my body aches the next day, you know, from holding poses for so long, because they're not created in kind of one go. They take some time to shift and to hold. So there's an element of kind of bodily labor, maybe, in that kind of sense, like of holding the pose. And the other aspect is maybe imaginatively or effectively, that much like the image templates I spoke about on Snapchat, I can just lose myself in this. I can lose myself in seeing in the fantasy image, I guess, for a little while until I take the dress off or see myself in the mirror, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much. I will we'll come back to you in a second, but I should speak to the other contributor to this magazine, Ellie Howard. So Ellie, could you say hello?
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm a journalist and I tend to write about photography. And my kind of source contribution started out life as a essay when I was doing my MA. And it very much started on Depop. I don't know if everyone knows what Depop is, but it's a peer-to-peer social selling app, and it's got kind of 35 million. About 90% of those are under 26. So it's really a very kind of Gen Z app to kind of talk about Gen Z. And like Moira, when I was kind of surfing kind of Depop, I came across some really curious images. They were sort of, it started with Reddy in Red, sorry, that's her profile name, who's one of the I interviewed, and she very much kind of had such a unique kind of approach to photographing herself. She would pick a strange background or kind of a fantasy kind of background, or a kind of very kind of stock photo background, and she would always have on this kind of Pussy Riot style kind of balaclava, and she would do incredibly sexualized, ridiculous kind of poses. And I found it really interesting that she was selling her items for about £60, £70, which is a lot for kind of secondhand vintage clothing that the apps I'm focusing on tend to sell. They are secondhand clothing apps. You can sell other things, but it's mainly secondhand clothing.
Just before we say a bit more about this, and we can have a look at some of the images that you're talking about, but I'm wondering what started you on this in the first place. You're an anthropologist by training.
Yeah, well, yeah, my background's in anthropology, so I'm incredibly interested in how the image is being used every day, and how people image and yeah, in kind of more strategic ways. I don't think people tend to think of Depop photography as kind of artistic, but it is incredibly artistic. And they've the Depoppers don't think of themselves as photographers or kind of artists, but they're kind of really bringing a lot of kind of cultural kind of references and also concerns into their work. So
I'm sure maybe we'll come back to this if you and Moira talk to one another. But do you notice that you could describe a style that relates to the platform on which images are made? Do they cultivate their own way of making pictures?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's as I see in Moira's work as well, there are definitely kind of strategies and themes and kind of genres that are kind of that overlap across all of these social selling sites, and almost every online platform has an element where you can sell nowadays, I think. So yeah, you do see the same kind of but I think on something like Debop, there is a very particular kind of genre. One of my interviewees, Mimi, she kind of talked about the butt shot on Debop, which is incredibly it's kind of everywhere, that if you want to sell jeans or trousers, you almost always see this butt shot, which is actually really connected to kind of hip hop culture and certain poses that would be using like in rap kind of like album covers, and it's just kind of been rehashed and recycled. So yeah, there are very clearly kind of each site has a different kind of a different aesthetic slightly. Yeah, would definitely say that.
So we've got an image here, which I think maybe was this the first picture you mentioned to me when you were talking about the piece?
Yeah, this is one of the deep photos. Yeah, and yeah.
So what's going on in this image?
So I found this interesting because this young woman, she sells exclusively through. She always is posing with motorcycle kind of gear, and it's just what makes her feel comfortable. And she usually has a kind of air kind of mask, like air filtration mask, which is really interesting. It was she continued doing it through COVID, but she's actually doing this before COVID with this posing with this mask, and she gets incredibly dressed up and kind of picks poses which she's learnt. And I think when Moira earlier was talking about templates, like there are certain templates of poses, which is a learnt kind of way of posing, and she very much kind of picks a stance, a kind of power stance, which I found really interesting because I see a lot of this kind of Debop photography is quite defensive. It's to be online is to be kind of be commercialized in a sense, and not only because our data is all being casted and used, but also here they're very much selling an object, which is an item of clothing and they're trying to sell for more money, which is why they take these kind of elaborate kind of photographs and spend a lot of time investing in the image. But also there's an element of them which wants to preserve their identity online. They don't want to have to sell themselves online. They want to be able to sell their clothes, but not share too much of themselves.
So this brings us on to the various ways in which people obscure themselves.
People obscure themselves, but also I should add with Debop, like they really, really pressure you to kind of photograph yourself wearing these items in these kind of quite elaborate ways, because the algorithm actually favors you if you get dressed up and kind of use bright colors. And if you just photograph something on a hanger, you're not going to get the same amount of money that you could if you kind of put yourself into the frame. And also I think because of buying clothes, people want to see how they fit. So you have to put your body into the frame and you have to photograph yourself. A lot of people are also selling it in bedrooms and some bathrooms because there tends to be mirrors, or that's just where their closets are, which is quite intimate, as Moira was saying earlier. Like you do see their bedrooms, and it's a kind of very kind of intimate process. And a lot of people selling don't really want that very much. So the easiest thing for them to do is just anonymize themselves, and the various approaches they take. Super interesting. The main one is kind of just cropping the head, I would say. There's also kind of using the iPhone to eclipse the face, which I find really interesting because it's the mode of kind of visibility, but also it's the like way of shielding themselves. So the camera becomes this kind of double bind, which I find really interesting. But then there's also kind of emojis would be pasted on the face, or then emojis I'll come back to in the second picture, but emojis or objects are just held up. There's often balloons which are blown up and held in front of faces. I don't know why. scribbles like the ones the girls have done here just to cover their faces up. Sometimes the scribbles are really which makes me laugh quite a lot because they just have such a strange kind of photo. And then there's the kind of subgroup, which is the kind of very elaborate performance kind of based people. And I should say that, yeah, you see, I've seen on 2 sites kind of like masks. Masks are very common, kind of using props, but particularly balaclavas. I don't know. I think that's I think that's just pussy riot. I think they've caused have been a big influence, but also masks are really interesting because masks have been used by a lot of artists when they're kind of talking about surveillance and kind of getting around surveillance, and also kind of neoliberal gaze and subverting it. So that's really what I was kind of interested in there.
You mentioned that a lot of these images are highly sexualized. Does that also help sell more clothes, or what's the reason for that?
It does. In kind of in mainly, I think what I find really interesting is it's not often about the clothes. People aren't really looking to buy a certain item of clothing. They're looking to buy aspiration. They want to see how they feel, and they want to kind of buy a feeling or an aesthetic which they can see themselves in. So often people are kind of reproducing the aesthetic that they think someone would want to buy. So people, lots of kind of butt shots, as I was saying. Which sexy sexualizing, and also kind of this image here where she's kind of covered her nipples with heart emojis. This is also really interesting, I find, because this is also kind of talks about how women have to kind of police their bodies and how they have to censor their own bodies online. Kind of this is actually an Instagram kind of concern kind of coming over into Depop. So she's kind of censored herself so she doesn't get flagged as part of the algorithm, but she's also kind of then revealing herself. There's a number of gazes I think are always being kind of enacted on these sites. There's the kind of there's the internalized male gaze, which I think happens a lot. So you kind of see why someone might be buying into a young woman might be buying into the butt shot. But there's also the male gaze, which kind of happens like across. That's an overused kind of term, but a lot of on these sites, because there's a kind of photo sharing and a private messaging aspect or feature built into the apps, people can contact each other in quite nefarious kind of ways. So a lot of people I spoke to have had unwelcome attention on a selling app. And I think as like Depop's like 90% are like under the age of 26, like it can get a bit kind of concerning. There's also a lot of fetish kind of communities that kind of operate on Depop and Vinted and stuff with used heights and so on. There's like loads of Reddit forums about kind of what to do when someone asks you to wear your tights and send a picture of them back to them. But also I think a lot of people are anonymizing themselves because they are quite concerned, and rightly so, about identity theft. Like on Vinted, for example, it's incredibly easy if someone's got pictures of your face to buy something from you, have it returned, and then have your address and your name. So that's a huge problem. And so I just have found on this website that people are really kind of using photography strategically in order to evade and kind of subvert while also making money. So I think this is a kind of very unique approach that younger generations are using on these sites in order to. I should also add that like I think there was a recent survey that said that like 40% of Gen Zs are juggling multiple jobs. They're more kind of tied into hustle culture. So they might kind of be selling the clothes on the side, and they can do it from their bedroom. All you need is a phone and Wi-Fi, and then you can make cash, and you can make a lot of cash. People are making one young Gen Zer was who's got a Depop site made £80,000 in 1 year. So yeah, you can seriously earn. It's not small amounts of money. So people are really doing it on the side. A lot of people are doing it on the side, even if it's just personal income.
So this image we're looking at now is this is the masks that you started off at the beginning talking about, and I suppose in a way the tenor of your piece is both the difficult relationship people have with photography and with the algorithm of the site that is trying to commercialize them, but also in a way it's talking about the creativity of the people who are struggling against this oppressive force, and these pictures in a way stand in for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I think and they're using creative kind of strategies in photography to do that. Because more people, the cost of living crisis has meant, and COVID kind of meant, more people were turning to online to buy and sell, and so it's kind of necessary, really. And also, I think if we think about like AI being able to kind of take your face from various kind of social media, even if you make your social media sites private, like to share between your friends, your Depop can't be private because you need to sell stuff, so you need as many customers as possible. So I think this really has come about through that.
Great. Thanks very much. I was wondering if, since we've got Moira here, I mean, it's such a happy accident that the two of you should be doing work around such a similar but such differing views of a similar subject. I wonder, Moira, if you have any reflections looking at the pictures that Ellie's been showing us on the different types of picture that you get on different platforms. I didn't ask you if you were looking at particular platforms yourself. Where were you seeing your pictures start with?
I started on eBay and went to Gumtree and then to Preloved, which I think really speaks of like 26 when I first started looking at these. Bit of Facebook Marketplace as well. I'm on Vinted, but I've not really used that for my art practice, more for myself. And that's mostly because I don't want to kind of disrupt my algorithms. Know what I like and I know what I'm looking for. But I clearly need to get on Depop because they are incredible, right? They are such, when I talk about having such complete images in their own right, they are so stylized and just so fabulous, really fabulous. And I don't know what to ask about them. Maybe one of the things, I mean, encouraging the sellers to put on the clothing and to perform for the camera. I'm just thinking about eBay. I need to double check this because this may now have been changed, but not so long ago when I was looking, they were saying that their rules are essentially white background, no bodies. And I just find that idea of inserting yourself into that space, taking up space, striking a pose, that is in relation to what you were writing about in terms of a strategy and kind of a subversion. I don't have a question. I just I just have a thing to say. I find that really interesting.
So Ellie, do you think that these different platforms each create their own type of image?
So I didn't quite hear you because you cut out. I don't know if that was just me.
Do you think that the different platforms each create their own type of image?
Yeah, no, I think Moira was right in saying that eBay definitely don't encourage you. Well, I think, they definitely want the item to be seen in a very clear sense. But I think that's why Depop, there's a completely different kind of set of kind of instructions to follow. And I think I need to check if it's still the same, but I do remember that when I was selling on eBay. But I think Depop is so interesting because it's basically stolen the interface from Instagram. So it's kind of a grid layout. So you're scrolling in the same way. So they basically, and because we've had kind of influencers on Instagram, and Instagram set up for the very visible, kind of very public influencer who's showing their face and really kind of being very familiar with their audience. Depop's encouraging you to be an influencer selling, so it's kind of pushing people to become, I remember who said it, like a kind of it's kind of like it's really, it wants to kind of encourage that behavior. And it's also got the like system, so so if items get more likes, so it kind of works in a very similar way, but of course people don't want to kind of be influencers with when they're selling their clothes. So actually something completely different from what they intended has happened. But they've still found ways to kind of please the algorithm and get those likes. And it's not, I focused on people being anonymous because I find that really interesting, but like you also see incredibly funny things happening. So there was I found on Vinted someone had got a giant cardboard cutout of Danny DeVito and had put little dresses on him, and those were selling really well as well, because it's just like people kind of marketing, thinking around the box. But yeah, I think there's also, alongside that, I was very interested in how young women are kind of, and also I should say there are young men also doing this practice now. I have seen it come across. I wasn't able to get pictures because he didn't give me copyright confirmation in time, but there's a young guy called Eduardo who's kind of doing something very similar in terms of balaclava, and his photographs are amazing. He spends so much time on them, and he was thrilled. He was like, oh, please, like show everyone my work, because I hadn't quite, he was thrilled that people were looking at his work, because he's obviously kind of thought about it as an artist would.
So does the community effectively increase does the interest of the community in certain types of pictures effectively increase the visibility of those pictures? So it's like, it is a sort of photographic beauty contest in a way.
Yeah, it's just like Instagram in a way. It's like kind of, I'd say, algorithm. So if things get like lots of likes, then you'll get more customers, you'll get more eyeballs, and you get a quicker sale. So I think that's why that's happening. Yeah, but there's definitely kind of different rules, and people responded to that. That they're kind of, they're given a box, and they're given a quick box on the feed, and they just do whatever they can with that box.
Great. So we thought we'd leave a little bit of time for anybody who wants to ask questions. It's great that we've got two people who are coming at this interesting subject from two different directions. So we can do this a few different ways. If you want to ask a question, you can type it into the chat, or you could put up your hand. There is some mechanism for doing that, or you can, if you raise your hand, we can ask you a question. I suppose one of the things that you notice with these platforms is that they come and go very quickly. How long has Depop been going, and is it on the rise or is it on the way down, would you say?
So I think it was founded in 2018. So it is very new, but it's kind of being taken over by Vinted at the moment, because obviously shipping. Depop's more popular in the UK, I would say, but Vinted has quickly taken over the whole of Europe. It's got like 80 million users now. But I think Vinted is growing because to get things from Europe into the UK, I think now you have to pay import duty tax, which I don't think was a thing before. Sorry, I haven't got posted or been in the UK for a while, so I don't actually know. But like within Europe, you could still sell things without having to pay duties. So I think there's kind of making kind of two different kind of markets. So Vinted is gaining popularity. I think Vinted also I'm sorry, I'm just talking about Vinted here, but yeah, they also don't charge you. They don't charge sellers; they charge buyers. So sellers don't pay any fees. So I think that's why a lot of people are moving over to Vinted. And yeah, they do just change really fast.
I think there's another thing that comes up is the question of whether or not they're dealing with a different market. Is Depop for expensive clothes, or is it for just any type of clothes? Is there a sort of class difference between the source images that Moira is dealing with and the images that you're dealing with, which seem quite fancy, if I can put it that way?
I think Moira was talking earlier about the price points. So I think Moira, what were you saying earlier about price point?
I was speaking to someone last week who buys from Depop, and they were saying that they understood that many stylists sell clothes on Depop, and these aren't necessarily fast fashion, the kind of higher end clothing, and therefore I think you mentioned it in your talk that the price point tends to be much higher than the other selling sites, and I think that's really interesting in terms of, I don't know if there's a connection or not, if I'm seeing something there where there really isn't anything. There's, I think, and also you mentioned this actually in your writing, that the production, they're stylized, but there's kind of high production values in there as well. And I don't know what the connection is between making more to get the money, maybe you need things to look more sophisticated than a kind of quick snap with your phone. It looks like there's lights, you know, there's lighting in there. It's really considered and stylized.
Yeah, one of the two of the people I spoke to use lighting. They rent out studios and go in there and just like, and then it becomes like almost editorial photography, because one of the people I spoke to sells like vintage Vivienne. She started just selling her clothes, and she's now selling vintage Vivienne Westwood for like £2,000. And that's largely due to the way she kind of photographs things and her unique kind of brand. And I think that's really interesting. I think, yeah, you can sell on vintage for like just a piece of clothes on a hanger, but you'll get maybe like 2-3 quid. Whereas like if you kind of do these elaborate kind of things, it's really interesting. I think that kind of also ties into a question I had kind of for Moira, kind of not more of a kind of thought is I really was interested in how you used your titles. You used the kind of title of the object being sold, which is usually just kind of like you're asked to just kind of write brand, item, color, kind of, so people can search kind of quickly. But I think what happens on Depop is people think they're buying, that people think they're looking at an item of clothing, and the sellers think people are looking at an item of clothing, so they kind of move in these weird positions to kind of show the clothing, but actually it's people are kind of buying into the feeling or sentiment of what they will look like in that object. And so I think it was kind of interesting you were talking about titles, because what's being photographed actually changes. It isn't what we think is being photographed, it's actually something else we're buying into.
That's really interesting. Yes, I mean the titles are, yeah, they are how they're listed on the selling sites is how I've titled them. So they're usually a colour and then a kind of brief description of what the thing is. Right now I can't think of halter neck dress. Maybe
it was like black. It was like a black dress. It was quite it was really interesting.
Yeah, and then you're quite right about the posers. I've thought of it in terms of cropping the face or masking the face as a way to direct the eyes to the clothing and to the body modeling the clothing, so that you can, as a kind of, you can look this good if you buy. It's kind of like a shortcut, and the sexiness maybe is a way of shifting things along a little bit.
Yeah, and it's how people have learned from advertising and then kind of co-opted those strategies into there, and you just kind of see it like filtered down into kind of like.
Yeah, I think you really succinctly say it in your piece. You say pose, 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 and then sorry, I've forgotten the next bit, but it's essentially
yeah,
like they're the products of this education from a whole variety of visual media. As you say, it could be R&B videos or adverts, or readers' wives is kind of what my photographs remind me of. They've got kind of that whatever that aesthetic is, that, you know, that kind of domestic DIY feel.
I didn't actually imagine we would ever get to Reader's Wives, but now we've done it. I don't know that we can top that.
Welcome.
So, well, thank you very much for the two of you introducing their work. I think to get the full experience, you should have a look at the work in the magazine. I've extracted cat off my magazine. I recommend you have a look at Moira's pictures in the magazine. There are a lot more than I showed you, and there's an excellent introduction by Eve Forrest, who's written about the work. And to get the full depth of what Ellie was saying about her adventures in Depop, read her piece in here. You should be able to get it in shops now, and if not, go to the website and we'll send you a copy. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to everybody for coming along, and I hope you enjoyed the magazine, and we look forward to seeing you at the next launch. So good night, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.